was a lot of denim and vests and flannel and scrunchies and butterfly clips. I remember I always used to twist my hair back and put butterfly clips in it to hold it back. Bell bottoms, pretty much a lot of what people are wearing today is stuff that people were wearing in the 90s as well.
So 90s was big with flannels. Jeans and flannels is all I remember from high school.
So I was always and am still very plain because I think when I was in college I probably just wore sweatpants, Adidas sweatpants, black with the traditional 3-stripe, and then I was probably wearing t-shirts, jackets and stuff. I was down in SLU, so pretty boring, but I've always played soccer, so I've always had pretty much Adidas, maybe even had like Samba, the old Samba tennis shoes and things like that. Jeans, not very dressy. I was in college, so no big deal there. Graduated, got my first job, so I could afford your basic khaki pants and a shirt. That probably looks a lot like this, would just have said, Parkway on it. And then, by the end of the 90s, I don't remember too much changing for me because I was just started working and then got married, had a family. All of that happened, and I just kind of remember being pretty much what I'm doing right now.
So in the 90s, I was in elementary school, so we weren't really going out high school students would go out then, but there was a lot of going to the movies, which isn't really a thing very often anymore. And just we really liked to go over to friends' houses, and boy bands were really popular. And so we would listen to music and we would make up dances, kind of like TikTok, but back in the 90s. So we would make up dances to songs and just hang out and be with each other.
When I think of 90s, I think of Nirvana and Bush and all the grunge music that came out of the Seattle area. I think it's a lot of the same stuff. I was an athlete in high school, so if I wasn't in a sport, I was usually hanging out with my friends and we were playing a sport outside of school. But I would think it's the same types of stuff the kids do nowadays. We played video games, maybe not as much. It wasn't online. It was more like, I think maybe PlayStation the original PlayStation might have came out in the 90s. Before that it was like Nintendo, Super Nintendo. But I feel like we did a lot of the same stuff that the kids now do.
Yeah, so it was really kind of a unique experience because I graduated from North in the late 80s, and then in college I came back for the first time to work with some of my old teachers. And so over spring break I came back, and I remember how different it felt because I was supposed to be the grown-up, but I still felt like a kid. But it was different that things were starting to get closed off. Back then, everything was open. The library was open, and the science department was open. And there were these curtains, like the ones that are in my classroom. There were curtains in a lot of the math departments and foldable walls. And they were starting to close it off because they figured out after the 25 years that the open concept wasn't good for student learning. And so I remember walls being the big change. And then I finished college and came back at the end of the 90s. I worked at Central for a few years, but came back over here and things were closed, would be kind of the thing. And I miss a few of the traditions. Early, we had graduation on the football field. Back in the 70s, we had a bonfire on the soccer field, upper soccer field, on homecoming after the pep rally and after the soccer game. And those things were really, really awesome. I understand why we couldn't do them anymore by the 80s because they were getting out of control, burning furniture and things that weren't supposed to be burned. But they were really cool traditions that we let go. And those things were sad. But I do know that the Viking tradition is still very strong. So proud to be a Viking. It's been going on for a long time.